So the astrology of the week of 21 March 2022 through 27 March 2022 is kind of a mixed week of astrology. There's some real difficulty this week with Mars, the Sun, and Venus tightening their conjunction. They come closer and closer together this week. And Venus is kind of in max pain with its relationship to Mars and Saturn. And so there's a sense of pressure this week that I think will be felt all week. But the good news is that Jupiter and Mercury conjoin, and then Mercury will leave Pisces and enter Aries. And so Mercury has some real nice activity this week to help us navigate those other difficulties I mentioned. Let's get into the charts. Let's get into the week. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome here. Welcome to my channel. This is Weekly Astrology. I release it every Sunday. And this week I'm releasing it a little bit later. I've been relaxing all day and enjoying the Aries ingress that has already happened. I wanted to wait to record this after Aries, the Sun entered Aries. Just a little bit of a celebration, you know, as an astrologer. This is our new year. And so this is astrological new year is today as I've recorded and released this video. So happy new year to you out there. I hope you're having a wonderful new year so far and enjoy this first week of the new year. We now have sunlight in the northern hemisphere more than we have nighttime. And so it's a very nice energy to be engaging with, especially as we're getting into now the spring and summer of 2022. What a dynamic season of astrology it's going to be. And I'll be here every week talking about it and engaging with the astrology and with you. So, and the other thing I just want to mention here, I'm kind of tweaking my format a little bit with the weekly astrology video. The main reason why and what I'm trying to accomplish, I want to have more efficiency with how the information's delivered. I want to be getting into charts faster. And so that the charts are kind of centered with the conversation as opposed to longer stretches where I'm just kind of pontificating. I know a lot of people enjoy that, but I want to make this very single pointed, which is discussing charts of the week ahead and getting right into it. And so I will still have my kind of contextualization and my higher level philosophies and other ideas that come in. Those will be interspersed throughout the chart examination. So these longer introductions, those ideas will still be found here, but we're going to jump into charts faster and we're going to move right into charts. And so I'm just going to do that this week. I want to start here. And part of it too is that instead of having separate screens for the transits and then the moon transits and these longer things, I'm just going to jump right in and I'm going to try to extract 3 themes for the week. This is what you need to know in my view for the week ahead. 3 things. 1, Mercury conjoins Jupiter on Monday, and this is that little bit of luck that is acquired when Mercury and Jupiter conjoin. We're going to look at the chart. It's a very interesting chart, and I think a very auspicious moment here on Monday to kick off Aries season. Second thing we'll do is examine this chart of the waning Sagittarius moon, which I think is the best moon this week. It's going to provide opportunities for integration and exploration of truth. This is a waning moon, but it's that Sagittarius moon ruled by Jupiter with Mercury and Pisces. And then finally, the third thing you should know, Mercury will join the Sun in Aries. So Mercury enters Aries at the end of the week, and that will impassion the communication, but it also helps improve this condition of Mercury, which is good for a whole host of reasons. So those are the 3 big stories this week, and that's what we're going to look at. And now we're getting right into the charts. So anyhow, there's time to pontificate and analyze and philosophize. You'll see I'm going to try to do charts a little bit differently. before my videos, I would sometimes rush a little bit through these charts because I had spent so much time earlier just talking. But now I think we'll just see how it goes. This is kind of what I'm tweaking and shifting. Always get better. It's my life philosophy. Always tweak and improve and try to deliver the goods in a better way, in a way that's more effective in every area of life, no matter the context. So I've spent some time this last week thinking about my astrology practice, my social media presence, how I want to engage the world and how I want to engage this video. So there's little tweaks. I'm just trying to improve things, and that's very Aries. And I have a lot of Aries in my chart. So it's nice to kind of be making decisions and moving forward. When the Sun is in Aries, Mercury will be in Aries this week. It's this very Maverick energy is my favorite phrase, where you step out on your own maybe and you say, I'm going to do this, making a decision. It's not the decision, it's the action upon the decision. That is Aries. And so get into action over this next period. And I was tweeting actually this week, I think 2 days ago, there will be a traditional planet. Now there's one in Aries, finally. The sun is in Aries. We finally have fire sign in the sky with the sun in Aries. But there will be a traditional planet in Aries until 28 October when Jupiter regresses or ingresses back into Pisces. So we have Aries being activated for a long, long stretch now, several months. And so this notion of getting in and acting on the decisions will be, I think, widely supported here. Of course, dependent on the individual chart of everyone or every entity we're looking at, whether be it a nation, a business, or a person. So, but that's the big thing here. And in terms of this Aries activation this week. And if we go to this chart here, I'm starting out now. I'm already doing a little bit of summarization. But this chart, the first thing I want to examine, it's right on Monday, 7 in the morning here in Central Europe. This video will come out probably 9 at night on Sunday. So a little late maybe if you're watching this video after. You may have missed this. But I still want to talk about it. Mercury will stay with Jupiter, co-present, we say, in the Hellenistic system, where even if the perfected aspect is completed, they still intermix when they are in the same sign. And so the rest of this week, Mercury and Jupiter will be intermixing. Mercury will be carrying Jupiter's light because that will be the last aspect that Mercury made. So there will still be this Jupiterian influence over Mercury all week. But here it perfects and maybe can be felt most strongly 7 in the morning here on Monday, the 21st of March. The thing about the chart that's quite interesting, you look here at Mercury in its own terms. So Mercury has now entered this little sliver. It's about, how many degrees is that? I think it's like 3 to 4 degrees. 1, 2, 3 degrees actually in Pisces, in the middle of Pisces, where Mercury actually gains strength. And Mercury can be more mercurial and have more analytical power, maybe more intelligibility in terms of what it's trying to convey or the data it's examining. There's maybe a sense of more traditional mercurial understanding here in this little pocket here in Pisces. And that's where Jupiter and Mercury will meet, right in that pocket. And so I've been saying here that this poetic flow, this is what I have written of, can provide deeper meaning. So Mercury in Pisces can be the poet, right? The metaphor, the using language in ways it's never been used before, the kind of recombinations of words, phrases, and images to communicate truth. And I think with Mercury in its terms, with Jupiter now exactly there too, there's a sense of maybe I have here, it all makes sense now. And what I was thinking about when I wrote this, I didn't write it here, but the idea, if you've ever done a psychedelic, there can be the sense of things coming together during a psychedelic trip. Awareness or insight is the term I'm looking for, insight, where you have this like, oh, life makes sense. I understand the meaning of life from this psychedelic experience. And then you come down, and it's often, those insights aren't strictly retained, but there does tend to be deeper reorganization in the psyche that can be quite beneficial. I've experienced it myself. Now, if this is not a recommendation or a stamp of approval of any kind of psychedelic use, you need to go to experts, focus on set and setting if you're going to do that. But there's studies that are coming out now. I think this is part of Neptune and Pisces with Jupiter there. These studies of psychedelic therapy has emerged as beneficial. There's people that have noted those benefits and are trying to integrate these therapeutics into the system, let's say. Of course, there's psychedelic practitioners that would push back and say they don't want to be part of the system. They want to keep it in this domain of the esoteric or the non-institutional, which I can certainly relate with. But I think this is part of the Pisces story with Jupiter and Neptune right here in Pisces. And Jupiter and Neptune are going to conjoin in Pisces, not this week, but in the middle of April, and Jupiter's applying to Neptune, so that's also increasing that energy. And I think this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction here in Pisces is sort of a forerunner activation. Neptune can certainly impinge on the way we perceive. There was a great tweet today on Twitter from let me see if from a friend of mine in Europe who is on Twitter that it's a European name, and so I haven't memorized it. very well. Sometimes with names that aren't from my own culture, they can just kind of, I don't really get them quickly on the first pass. But let me get up this person's tweet. You can go find it. There's a whole tweet here about Neptune being about perception and culture and how we perceive things and the music and the art. And Neptune was discovered when photography became invented there in the 19th century, and the rise of photography is connected to Neptune. And photography is all about imagery, right? You snap time, you kill a moment of time, and then you can like create whole worlds through perception. And so it's mercurial in the way, is my point. There's a Mercury component, and certainly Jupiter has to do with perception and feeling and what we believe, right? Mercury may be more the details and technological kind of details of how we perceive, but Neptune is in this basket of planets that would be relevant when we talk about perception. And so this is Anna. Sorry, Anna, I just wanted to get your name right. Anna Leorn. And I think in France or Portugal, but you can check out her thread on Neptune through the signs. But it's relevant. It's relevant. I bring this up because it's relevant to Mercury and Jupiter conjoining in Pisces in this whole conversation about psychedelics, which changes the perceptions. Aldous Huxley, The Doors of Perceptions, is his famous book from the William Blake poem, that we can kind of open up our perceptive channels and see the world anew, you know. I think that setting aside psychedelics, you know, I'm not doing psychedelics. I've done them plenty in my youth. I don't do any drugs anymore. There is ways to play with perception and feel these alterations in a totally sober mind frame. And, you know, just asking myself, what is, you know, feeling the truth and wisdom of reality, kind of finding alignment maybe in terms of a path ahead to access truth or divinity or wisdom, this sense of it making sense, that things are finally coming together and making sense around Jupiterian themes, truth, beauty, justice, hope, all of those Jupiterian themes. You now have Mercury to kind of play with the details of those and bring the clarity around how these feelings may manifest. What else do I have here? The interesting thing about this chart, and this is why I want to focus more on charts, because there's always so much in every chart, and we can spend more time with charts as a way to stick with the astrology and to kind of let the astrology guide. But this chart has this triple conjunction in Aquarius. You've got Mars and Saturn on either side of Venus, and nothing's intervening. So Venus is what, as we say, enclosed by the benefics. It's official now in this chart because Venus is within 7 degrees of Saturn now. And so this is really pressure. This is a lot of pressure. It could be feeling pressure, alienation from the body or from the self, you know, dissatisfaction of all kinds. Very intense, just like sort of a grind, the grind of Mars and Saturn, impinging on Venus and the pleasures and beauties of Venus. So this fixed sign intensity, we might say, here in the middle decan of fixed signs and then getting into these later degrees. The thing about this week is that the moon in Scorpio, as I record this is in Scorpio, but the moon will be in Scorpio also this first part of the week here. And so the Jupiter-Mercury conjunction, I think, can provide relief or release or maybe wisdom that can help us as we're dealing with this. Both this week, there's a moon in Scorpio that will square that triple conjunction in Aquarius with Mars, Venus, and Saturn. And then at the end of the week, the moon comes into Aquarius and conjoins the conjunction just as it's most intense. And so I think this weekend's Aquarius moon really is a climax of sorts of some heavy-duty, pressurized astrology of this March month. And then, of course, the lunar nodes are right there. So it's very intense for fixed sign folks. You know, we may all feel this, but if you've got fixed placements, you may be feeling this more than others. Excuse me. I've been talking to a lot of people here that are astrology enthusiasts or astrologically literate, and many people are feeling this intensity and this urgency and this pressure from this fixed T-square with the nodes and then that fixed stellium in Aquarius, and then the moon now coming to activate. So take care out there this week. This is my moment in the talk where I really want to say, be careful out there. If you have these fixed placements, you may want to turn down. I've delayed some decisions, frankly. I'm pushing some things off until after we can get Venus out of Aquarius and maybe even Mars out of Aquarius and then of course eclipse season. So I'm kind of waiting till after eclipse season to really start making some bigger moves. Of course, I always have work to do and little things. I mean, there's always pockets we have to act. Not every decision can be pushed off until May, but I'm certainly doing that with some because of this astrology. It's just too much. I mean, I'm having to do everything against this backdrop, and I prefer to just turn things down and go into rest and wait mode and delay mode. So just to come back to the chart, when you have Mercury and Jupiter conjoining in Pisces, I think there's real opportunities to think about this kind of higher meaning, the deeper meaning, and making sense of things from maybe more of a spiritual or wisdom tradition frame of mind, even as a way to process this. And the thing about the chart, this Pisces conjunction of Mercury and Jupiter is averse to the Aquarius pileup. And so there's almost a way here, there's things you may be able to rest into or escape into, a Piscean keyword, a Neptunian keyword, as a way to kind of mitigate or mollify the intensities of this fixed pileup. So this could be things like music, bathing. I know last week we were talking about bathing and resting in water, playing music, getting out in the sun if you're in the Northern Hemisphere now with the sunshine. It was very sunny today, using that solar energy. But just a way to access truth, beauty, and wisdom, and separate out as a protective from that fixed pile up. And look at the moon here. I really like the Scorpio moon on the one hand, because the Scorpio moon will trine Jupiter and Mercury. So it activates it from a supportive trine, where those intensities of a Scorpio moon actually may flow into or get a flow back and forth from Jupiter and Mercury. And then of course the Scorpio moon squares the fixed stellium of Mars, Venus, and Saturn. So that Scorpio moon is kind of a pivot here for both of these energies. And of course, Scorpio moons are depth charged and intense. So just take care early this week in particular, and maybe use a little bit of this Jupiter Mercury to contemplate higher truth, higher wisdom, and maybe some of the details of how to get or access those higher truths and higher wisdom. Remember, Mercury is the planet of magical ritual and magical practice. Maybe you have some routines or rituals you can do, mala beads, saying the rosary, any kind of prayers, or reading spiritual books. That could all be part of how to use Mercury, a specific task, with the Jupiterian energies of hope and wisdom as a way to get through this very charged early part of this week. So that's the first chart. I want to move now. I want to move to the next chart I'm interested in. This is going to be the 24th of March on Thursday, 5 in the morning, or 4:30 here in Central Europe. It's just the chart I've picked. This is my transit of the week, and maybe I should write it here just because I usually write it. Actually I'll just leave it. But this is the transit of the week of all these lunar moments here. It's this Sagittarius moon that is the best moon in my view this week, because there it is. It's, are you going to take a Scorpio moon where the moon is exiled and square Mars and Saturn and Venus? Or will you take a Capricorn moon, a fallen moon in Scorpio, an exiled moon in Capricorn, or then a moon conjoined that Mars and Saturn? I think this Sagittarius moon really is the best moon, and the ruler of Sagittarius, this fundamental principle of any kind of electional work. How is the condition of the ruler of the moon? Well, in this case, you have a Jupiter that is now out from the sun's beams and visible. So you may be able to sneak in here and see Jupiter a little bit this week. It's an important part of the astrology of Jupiter's condition now. It's been what we call in phasis. As it emerges out from the sun's beams, it can get very powerful there. So you get that this week, and then you get that Jupiter ruling the moon here. In this chart, I'm lucky where I am. I can get the moon very closely applying within less than a degree here, while the moon's on the midheaven and while Jupiter is there in the first house. And so this is a strong chart for maybe doing something. Maybe I'll think about how I want to use this. But I have here big insight, big truth. So those themes that I was thinking about earlier, related to Mercury and Jupiter's conjunction on Monday, I think there's a continuation here. I mean, Mercury in this chart is still in Pisces. It's still close to Jupiter, relatively 5 degrees away. And there's this blending of this kind of Mercury-Jupiter mutual, really Mercury getting support from Jupiter by this time. But the moon then applying to those two planets by a square, there's something here where we can continue this story. Maybe something that emerges earlier in the week It's now time to do a little bit more about it. Speak affirmatively to someone around you. This can be the fire energy of Sagittarius, supported by a trine from the sun in Aries now. So now you're seeing how maybe this transit could be a time to utilize the fire element. I've been tweeting and writing about fire energy the last few days of, the passion, the motivation, the spiritual urgency, the kind of inner imperative to move into the world, and then the moving. It's both the feeling, the inner light and the inner fire, and then the actions that we take because of it. And so this is that first fire moon trining the sun since the sun has entered Aries, ruled by a Jupiter that's quite strong in Pisces. And so again, I do think that this is like big insight, big truth, but maybe some big steps or some baby steps, whatever steps you can take, but some steps may get taken here to actualize. And I have here relaxing into knowledge, knowing we're held in higher truth. This also feels like even communicating that knowing, telling your friends. I've been hanging with some people here in my city, some cool astrologers, and just I've kind of tapped in a little bit to some of the spiritual community here, yoga studios, Reiki masters, spiritual and astrological energy. So it's nice to find community. But this is the kind of thing where I think fire can be expressed when you're with people and you get out and engaged with others of a like mind or of a like passion. You sort of join light, sun and moon in a trine, and kind of and maybe your efforts can be propelled even further with finding other people that feel like you. Shared interests is, I guess, what I'm saying here. So this could be how it goes too. Maybe thinking about knowledge, higher truth, and conveying that to people that are ready or want to receive your particular flavor of wisdom and of truth. I like that for this transit. And the relaxing part I think is important. We're still waning with this moon, and I do think there's some restful integration here of what in this chart, if you go, it's still closely applying, right? Venus is 4 degrees now from Saturn in this chart. Mars is 3 degrees behind Venus. So this fixed pile up and this enclosure of Venus is getting more intense as the week goes on. And so I do think that the waning component of this moon and the restful component of this waning moon is something that I would take heed and kind of place here with sort of great importance. Let me see here. Actually, I didn't look at this earlier, but this moon does appear to be enclosed because it's separating from Venus and it is applying to Jupiter in this chart. So this is an enclosure as well, a benefic enclosure, to the extent that Venus can offer some support right here in Sagittarius. I wish I'd gotten the lunar mansion up. I didn't do that for this video. You can check that if you want, lunarium.co.uk. That will give you that mansion, that lunar mansion of Sagittarius here. I mean, I guess, should I do it? You want me to do it now? I have time. I can Google search here and get it up. Why don't I get it up? Why not? This is the good thing about recording a video like this, where I have my Zoom up and I can share my screen. So here's lunarium.co.uk. This is the 16th mansion that I had pre-populated for me because I had been looking at this before. But let's go. I think maybe the 19th mansion, maybe something later than that. But yeah, no, it's the 20th. So the 20th mansion here, it's the 20th and the 21st, because in that chart, Venus is 16 and Jupiter is 19. And so let's see, the 20th lunar mansion, Al-Naham, traveling by land, collective effort and work. So remember I was saying that collective shared passion energy, that joining with Sagittarius and Aries and the sun and moon there. So the sense of collective effort and work, I like it. Traveling by land, so maybe getting out. I actually have a friend, and she was telling me, when should I fly? And her flight's coming up for the next week and a half, and I was like, this Sagittarius moon, get this Sagittarius moon if you're gonna have to pick a date. I think actually it's the next week, so the Pisces moon that comes next will be applying to Jupiter. That's when she's gonna fly. But this is a good time if you have to travel. This Sag moon here, 24th, I think it's a good time. This lunar mansion shows that. Let's shift over to the 21st mansion, because some of these degrees are in the 21st. This is Al-Balda. Farming and gardening, building, healing, travel. So travel is both good. You see how the lunar mansions tell us about the signs and the significations of the signs. Sagittarius, the day sect, outer active sign of Jupiter, can be traveling, right? Pilgrimage, traveling for truth and wisdom. Jupiter can expand things. Certainly, if you want to use the alphabet, what a lot of astrologers don't like, but I think it can be useful. The 12-letter alphabet, I think is what they call it. Sagittarius would be that ninth sign, then the ninth house of travel, ninth sign Sagittarius. I'll probably get, if you don't like the 12-letter alphabet, you can tell me in the comments, you know, why, you can chastise me. Just kidding, just kidding. I think it's useful. I think it can be useful. Some of those connections are actually really astute and can be really useful. This ninth house with Sagittarius, I think, is one of them that is. But healing, I also like as a signification. And with this waning moon, using that healing energy. You know, some healing behaviors are very active. You know, like people will go find their healer. They'll go out to find the healer to take the medicine, or you have to do things for healing, like even getting certain massages. It can be very, you know, you have to move the body or stretch. This is part of the healing. Sometimes there's medicine that's prescribed that you have to do things to do the healing. So maybe this is the kind of stuff we're engaged in here as the moon is in these two lunar mansions. So let me go back to my chart and my PowerPoint. You can see here that there is the moon. Last aspect, it was a sextile to Venus, 16, right in that 16 degrees or the 17th degree. And then now it's going to apply to Jupiter, and there's nothing else that intervenes. So it's that bona fide moon, and those mansions are quite pertinent for what we were already tapping into. So, okay, let's come back here. This is sextile of Venus. This is the thing about the moon breaking up Venus's enclosure as well. So the moon, for this temporary period here in these degrees of Sagittarius, it gets to use Venus to enclose itself between Venus and Jupiter, but the rays of the moon break up Venus's enclosure. And so I love this as some relief for Venus, which we don't get when the moon comes into Capricorn here. Basically, I think I have it here, let me go back. When the moon comes into Capricorn on the 24th, which would be later that same day. So Sunday, Saturday, so it's Thursday at 10:53 on the 24th, the moon will enter Capricorn in Central Europe. And that Capricorn moon transit makes no aspect to Aquarius. So the moon does not cast rays. It cannot break up Venus's enclosure while it is in Aquarius. And then when the moon comes in on the weekend here, this would be Sunday at 2 a.m. in Central Europe. So we start that Aquarius intensity. It's only Sunday and then into the Monday and Tuesday, which is the real climax of the Venus's troubles. But during that period, the moon does come in and break up the enclosure too, but it mixes with Mars and Saturn by hard aspect, by conjunction. And so that might not be ideal for the moon. Okay, let me flow back here. Where are we? I was here, I was on the transit here. No, so this is the chart, the transit of the week. So use this transit of the week. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful transit. Collective efforting, finding like-minded people, doing some travel, building together, these types of energies, the fire energy, the sun and the moon, consciousness, the body, you know, self, other, joining. All right, let's push. The last transit I want to look at this week is the Mercury's entry into Aries, joining the sun. And I love this for Aries. All of the Aries placements out there, the Aries people, I'm one of them. I can't wait. You know, the sun alone, having the exaltation ruler of Aries there, is going to light up any placement you've got in Aries with the fire of the sun. Having that exaltation ruler is very auspicious. That sun is then joined by Mercury, and I think this is when maybe the articulation powers. So I have it here, I had written it here. The fire element is passion, spiritual motivation, and drive. I had written this in some other places and in some tweets as well. And by the way, I've been using my Instagram a little bit more, cross-posting from Twitter. So some of you might not have Twitter. Look for my Instagram to be a little bit more engaged with some astrology content. I'll still post some photographs, but I'm just, you know, I've been down, no fire in the sky is kind of, you know, we're always having reorientation with certain things in our lives. And I've been a little less active with my Instagram posts. So I figured to keep the account going, I would do some cross-posting with certain tweets, not every tweet, but just some of the ones that people like, I'm gonna put on Instagram. Anyhow, I was writing there about the fire energy, I believe. And let me just come back here, but this is with Mercury joining the sun. So it's the inner fire, the divine motive, the divine kind of inspiration, the imperative to move and to act. But Mercury brings in the ability to then articulate why, articulate how, plan for when. You know, the mercurial power is very potent, you know, and having Mercury now joining the sun, it gives the two components. The sun is the consciousness, it's the perceiving consciousness. But Mercury is the detailed thought. It's the process of the many thoughts that get created and the crazy anxiety of thoughts. And, but when those two join, we become aware of the thinking, we can deploy the thinking. I always used to like this. People would tell me, make the thinking serve you. Don't become the servant of the thinking, become the master of the thinking. Meditation practice certainly helps that. But there's a sense, I get lost in my thoughts all the time. I have to pull myself out of it. That's what I focused on, is like interrupting the self-talk. Sometimes like, all right, this thinking is not the kind of thinking I want. Let me replace it and then pull myself out. And I've gotten a lot better at that as I've gotten into my life. It took a long time, so I'm not trying to be dismissive. Sometimes the thought just comes on us, That's the whole swords suit of the tarot. All of those swords cards, you can tell they're like brutal because the mind it's like a monster, just takes over, So the monkey mind, they call it, I think, in certain Buddhist circles. But, this with Mercury here with the sun, I think there can be a blend. And this is the thing about Mercury coming into the sun as well, is that it's still under the sun's beams. But because the sun is exalted, this Mercury has protection. It's almost like it's a great mitigation of Mercury being under the sun's beams as well. There is textual support for that. I think one of the Arabic astrologers, the Islamic astrologers, gives textual support for that. But it's also just the principle of the ruler of a planet. If that ruler is strong and there's an aspect, so reception, that planet is mitigated. And I think this does help with Mercury being under the beams. Leaves Pisces, though the later degrees of Pisces may be challenging, and then it comes into Aries and gets instantly the support of the sun. We can talk about things. We can use the magic. So remember what I was saying earlier, the passion of life and the divine kind of imperative. The magical side of Mercury comes into Aries, and maybe now you will, I'll probably do more just readings, tarot readings. I'm going to bring my deck out. I've had it out just off and on all winter, and I usually always keep it out, but I had some cleaning done and I put it up. But this is the kind of things I'm thinking about, getting my magical tools and engaging them, whatever that is for you, whatever those are for your practice. Mercury now with Aries is great for that. And you can look to the decans. I'm just thinking, the reason why I bring those up is that when the sun enters that second decan of Aries, that is the sun's decan. There's some really rich solar magic that can be done there in those middle degrees. Just an example of how now the planet of magic and of divination joins the sun, and you may be able to work more directly with that. Okay, let me go. I have one more slide to talk a little bit more about Mercury. There's more support for asking for needs to be met during the Venus enclosure. And so this Mercury comes right into Aries, right as the moon comes into Aquarius. And so it's kind of peak Venus enclosure with the two planets that may represent, femininity or women, the female part of our lives or the female parts of ourselves. Those two planets mixing with Mars and Saturn. This could be, not as comfortable, I would say, maybe for how we feel, pleasure, beauty, self, even the women in our lives, mothers, daughters. But having Mercury there, and look, it's the sextile that I'm focused on. Mercury now makes a sextile. So I think there can be support. Hey, telling people, hey, I have some needs, like the communal side of Venus and the moon, that community participation that's so important for those two planets. With Mercury making the sextile from Aries, I think that the way we talk about, our needs is what can be supportive here, and the active side of it. This is why I'm thinking about assertively asking, hey, I need to have my needs met. And that's I would never phrase it like that, by the way, but I might text a friend, hey, can you meet for coffee? I just want to share with you about how I've been feeling, and maybe taking active steps to communicate and express where you're at or where I'm at can really help get through. Again, I want to repeat, Mars, Venus, and Saturn so close together in fixed signs with the lunar nodes very close there, and now the moon there, both at the beginning of the week and the end of the week. This is, to me, some of the roughest astrology of all of 2023, frankly. And by the way, the Barbeau Planetary Cyclic Index bottoms out on Thursday and Friday, the 24th and 25th. The same reading, the lowest reading it will be in the whole of the century. And then that index starts rising. That's a mundane astrological index, but it has time into collective struggles we've been going through recently. So one reason to be optimistic that this week has the bottoming of that index. And this transit, both the beginning and the end of the week with the fixed moons, are kind of the climax in a certain way symbolically with the dynamic activation of those fixed signs with Mars and Saturn and the lunar nodes. Okay. Let me come back here, finish this slide. Direct communication via the sextiles. Yeah, I mentioned that sextile with Mercury. It just feels important to me to have Mercury and the Sun making the sextile as we're going to have sort of peak pain for Venus. So talk, bring your attention to the pain, explore the pain, bring it into your magic, bring it into your relationships. You know, I think that the hiding is where things can get difficult. And that's why I like that this is Aries, because Aries is a sign that's less about hiding in a certain way. I mean, it can be a loner sign, but you know, I think that it also can be something where we just take action. Maybe Mercury, which is a planet of communicative connection, can help, you know, make us not go it alone as much during this week. Okay, let me go here. The last thing I have here, Moon in Aquarius now activates the Venus enclosure. I've already talked about that. And I said, yeah, more importantly than ever to maybe address things directly as needed. And that's where the Mercury in Aries provides great assistance. You know, just, you know, being, you know, direct. I've found it's worked for me. It's like, hey, yeah, this is an easy energy. I've been expressing that a little bit more than usual because people have been expressing to me their frustrations and their struggles. And this is where difficult astrology, the great opportunity of having difficult astrology is that it actually provides relief in seeing the difficulty in the symbolic map of the sky. It's like, oh, okay, that's just the astrology. Wow. It's not me, you know. And so this kind of astrological communication or using the astrology as part of how we talk about pain and difficulty can be it's one of its great benefits. Mercury, the planet of astrology, in Aries with the Sun, sextiling the Moon and Venus here, right on the weekend, right on Sunday. So Mercury enters Aries at 9:45 on Sunday. So I'm thinking all in Central Europe. So all day Sunday, this is when we might be more active and more communicative, and then into next week. And then Mercury will be in Aries for 3 weeks. So this is like a 3-week energy that will provide some great opportunities. During Mercury's time in Aries, we will see Venus and Mars enter Pisces. And so that will feel like, I think, even more of a relief. You know, Mercury, notwithstanding Mercury, like getting Venus and Mars both into Pisces, I think it's 5 April, then 14 April. These are the big shifts out of the Saturn-ruled part of the year, which was for several months. We had heavy Saturn dominance in terms of the domicile tree. That's all about to end in April. By April 14th, that is over. All that's left is Saturn there alone. And so then we get this whole new phase of the spring. And I'll say this, I've been thinking about the spring this way. There's 3 phases. There is this climax of the fixed pileup with Mars and Saturn and Venus. That ends on the 14th of April when Mars enters Pisces. The next part of the spring, the middle third, you might say, is going to be the second stellium in Pisces with Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, culminating in the conjunction of Jupiter with Neptune, the conjunction of Venus with Jupiter during the eclipse on April 30th, and then Mars, and then Jupiter moves into, and so that's the middle part, is this, it's up to the first eclipse where it's like the most powerful pile up in Pisces, because all of those 4 rulers are there. Modern, traditional, exaltation, and triplicity are all there together. And then that's during the eclipse. That's captured by that eclipse in Taurus, ruled by Venus. That's conjoined Jupiter by the exact degree. And then in between eclipses, Jupiter comes into Aries. And then we kick off this third part of the spring, which is power Aries. Mars comes into Aries, Jupiter is in Aries. We'll have Mercury in Gemini and Venus in Taurus. There's going to be a beautiful splay of some really nice support after eclipse season. And so we're still finishing off this first moment of the Saturn intensity and the heavy Saturn. And this week is really the climax of it. So, all right, that's a little bit of the kind of larger context. I'm glad I got to put some of that in here. And you can see how I'll be doing this. There'll just be a free flow, very chart centered, but when things come out, they're going to come out in this context of having a certain chart we're examining. All right, so those are the 3 charts. That's the weekly astrology. That's what I'm looking at this week. Let me pull a tarot card. I'm still going to do that. Never will abandon that. Well, never say never, but I used to do 2 cards, and now I pared it down to 1, and so that's how I made this part of it more efficient. And sometimes all you need is 1, because it just takes 1 to add additional context symbolically. So this is interesting. This is the first decan of Sagittarius, the motion card, the 8 of clubs, Mercury. And Mercury's decan in Sagittarius in that first decan. So again, these Mercury-Jupiter combinations, the tarot here is pointing us to that. The cartomancy deck here is pointing us to that. Here it is. You can see here motion, Mercury in Sagittarius. And this is a card, if you know the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it's the 8 wands in the air. And you read about writers that write about Rider-Waite-Smith, they talk about how it's like these arrows, these wands got thrown in the air. And you know what happens when something's in the air? Boom, it falls to the ground fast. And so there's a sense of speed. That's why I have motion here. There's movement and motion with when Mercury and Jupiter combine. And you know, this is what I think going back to, I think this is pointing us back to the beginning of the week, Mercury with Jupiter, these final days of Mercury co-present with Jupiter in Pisces and Mercury's role in Pisces. Maybe things are going to move a little bit faster. Maybe, especially with Aries season now here and the sun in Aries, and then you'll have the first fire moon trine the sun in Aries. So look for speed to pick up in your life, and look for things to get, maybe you're going to be called out into the world. People want to do more things. You know, maybe world events are going to come to a head. I still think there could be some peace agreements coming up in April based on 1856's astrology and that peace agreement, the Treaty of Paris that resolved the war in Crimea, the Crimean War. I'm optimistic, but maybe this will be kind of the final kind of active period before there's some settlement. Let's pray with this conflict. I hope it's over very, very soon. But even in our lives, you know, right? Fire's coming into the sky, and you know, things may shift and happen fast. The last thing I'll just say with this card is, yeah, talk about truth. You know, sometimes when we bring truth and we call truth by name, you know, we say, God help, things can happen fast. We say, I want to contemplate truth, God, show me. You know, there can be a speed by which sometimes those things are responded to energetically and kind of in the unseen realms. And then the last thing, yeah, I'll just say with the enclosure of Venus culminating really this week and then early next week, that can also bring some dynamic movement, fast change. So take care out there. And I think, you know, using Jupiter being averse with Mercury, that first part of this week, use that, and then ruling that moon on Thursday, that Sag moon, use that Jupiter because it's averse to Aquarius. So this kind of protection that we can get, even if it means escapism, healthy escapism, right? Sometimes that can be like I said, I'm kind of pushing some things off because I don't want to do it right now. Not with an enclosed Venus and a Mars-Saturn conjunction coming here in March and in April, early April. So, all right, I'm going to leave you with that. Have a wonderful week. That is weekly astrology. That is weekly tarot. I will talk to you very soon. See you next Sunday.